Welcome, everybody, to the Baseball Blueprint Podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game. Today, we're pleased to welcome Coach Chris Cates from USF. Chris, it's awesome to have you on the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
This will be good. So, Chris, you were introduced to me through our mutual friend Tyler Packnick, who is also a very passionate infield mind. Can you dive in a little bit within your background of infield play and who kind of guided you in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was growing up playing, I often got to do a lot of work with Chris Burke from the Houston Astros, played at the University of Tennessee. He used to come out to our practices at Louisville because he was a Louisville native. So in the off season, he would come get his work done there. Also, Sean Figgins played in the big leagues for 10 years. Played at my high school with my brother, and so whenever I was around my high school, he was usually there in the off season as well, getting work in. And then over the years, coaching wise, Dan McDonald was my coach my last year at Louisville. I learned a lot of the infield stuff that I incorporate now with my players from him, as well as Joe Urso from the University of Tampa, another great infield guy, another great head coach. And then professionally wise, Calix Crab is one of my best friends. I used to work out with him in the off seasons when we were both still playing professionally, and he's with the Pirates organization now. But learned a lot from him just on the pro side as well.
Yeah, and you had an incredible playing career, like you mentioned, playing at Louisville, and then I believe it was Twins, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so you got this, incredible baseball experience from the player's side. How did that help you in your transition into the coaching space?
I think it was kind of an opportunity to share, just the consistency part with coaching. When I was coming up, I got to be around a lot of players. So when it came to coaching, I just honestly coached guys kind of like I was taught how to play. And that was just basically having a routine every day to follow. Always, the preparation piece of it is important. I think in being able to make players understand that, you know, it's practice. You're coming out and doing infield play, but you got to have a plan of what you're trying to accomplish each day. Whether that's just a blueprint for yourself or just little points that the coach is trying to make sure that you're getting out of it. Because I know as a player early on in my career, you just it's practice. I'm going to go out. Oh, we got individual defense for 30 minutes. I don't know really what we're doing, but we're just going to go out there and do it. And so I think just kind of being around the guys that I was able to learn from on the playing side helped me to develop plans for guys on the coaching side.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you first started out, and you're that coach who's coming off of the field and into the dugout, what was the dynamic like for you mentally? I know a lot of guys, and I'll speak for myself too. That transition was difficult because then I had a lot more to think about. I wasn't just focused on myself; I was focused on this other group of players, and it's usually more than 4 or 5. Was that a difficult transition for you, or is that something that you had pretty natural?
No, it definitely was, a transition because you're so used to just going out there and doing it, and you being the guy working on stuff. A lot of times, I think early on, I think I had trouble communicating how to do it. I could go out there and take ground balls at guys and say, "Look, watch this or do this," but then realizing that you got to be able to communicate with their skill set and how they can relate to it. So I would say that's something that early on it took me a little bit to get because I'm a very personable kind of guy and I communicate well, but at the same time when I came off the field it was like, oh, just watch me do this or just watch do this. And there's guys who physically obviously are different sizes and different guys have different capabilities and different skills. So kind of learning that, man, you can't coach everybody the same way because they have different skill sets. That was, I think a challenge early on when I started coaching.
Gotcha. And it's awesome. I'm looking back at your kind of roadmap for where you've been, and you've been. I mean, you've put your hands on some fantastic programs, and I'm sure impacted those programs in positive ways. But one of the programs that jumps out to me as a guy who's recently coming from that level is Tampa. Um, and just this past year they won the national championship. But what was your experience like with that program, and kind of who were some voices that you heard that were really just powerful guys?
Yeah, so Coach Urso, he's been there for a long time, as well as the pitching coach Sam Militello and Jose Jimenez. They all played at University of Tampa, so they're Spartans through and through. And for me, I'm from Tampa, but and grew up around the program. But when you get into the program, they call it the Spartan way, and it's just the way they've done things for a number of years and been successful at it. And I had to learn that because I was a guy. I played Division I baseball. I played professional baseball. So you come in and you have an idea of how you did it, and how you want to kind of help the guys that are there. But they had the Spartan way, and I had to learn and adjust to their way. And it works, and it's a pro ball mentality. A lot of the time, Coach Urso, he coached with he was a manager in the Angels organization for a while, so he's been a pro ball coach for a number of years, and then went back into college, and he kind of took that approach. And the guys are it's their careers, and what he'll tell you is they're in charge of their career, and at the end of the day, if you don't have your own routine, if you don't have accountability for your own career, then it's going to be hard for you to develop and get better. And so I think that type of mentality was different for me because I came from Florida State, and it was a very high level program, and just kind of seeing like, man, like this is a complete 180 of how the guys are developed here. It was not as I don't want to say as fundamentally programmed, but it was very individualized on like, hey, like, we're going to show you, how to get yourself better, but you got to put in the work, off the field and extra, because we only get so many hours a day. And, it was just kind of like that. Hey man, like we're out here for early work. If you want to come, other programs, you got early work. It's either mandatory or it's just part of your daily program. And at the University of Tampa, a lot of it is, hey, look, we'll be out here. We'll have the field open. We'll be here to hit your ground ball, so you BP, but we're not going to force you to be out here. We're not going to beg you to be out here. You just get, it's kind of the Spartan way. It's just a known that, hey, this is what we do. And, the guys all gravitate towards it. And that's why they've been so successful, because it's a lot of guys that are, mature, and take control of their career at an early age. And, you don't really have to do much to motivate them because they know what they're playing for every day.
That's awesome. It's awesome, and again, it's year in year out that that group is competing for a national championship. And your experience as a player was at the Division I level and at the professional level, bouncing between divisions. What's that movement like? And again, I've floated around too, but there's always a little bit of a culture shock when it comes to new rules or regulations that I have to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. The rules is the first thing because, as you know, like Division I has quiet period, dead period, all that, and then Division Two is very open. You can go recruit mostly all year, and then just learning the different rules in terms of contact and hours limits and things like that. There's just so many differences. Yes, it's still baseball, it's still high level baseball, but just the things that you're allowed to do versus what you're not allowed to do. That's something that immediately is different, and you start to realize, man, like we got more time to do this, but less time to do this at the different levels. In terms of I would say the talent, I didn't see much knockoff because, as you know, at University of Tampa, a lot of guys that are there have been at Division I programs, and they're looking for an opportunity to play for a championship and play pro ball, and they know that what, I can go to University of Tampa and have the same opportunity to chase those dreams. So I would say the Sunshine State Conference is pretty much a Division I conference in my opinion. Just the level of talent, the level of coaches that are there, they all have probably professional or Division I background experience to where you kind of check your ego at the door when you go into the Sunshine State Conference because it's a very, very talented and competitive conference, and it's a dogfight. As you know, there's no easy weekends in that conference, and man, the other thing about Division II as well is typically those weekends are Friday night and then a doubleheader Saturday. So it definitely takes a look at your depth and being able to recruit not just those frontline guys, but you go through a lot of pitching, especially in 3 games in 2 days, and the strategy of, oh man, do I use my closer for this first game or save him for the second game to try to get a sweep or win a series. So those things were something that I had never really dealt with until I got to Division II and realized, man, like there's a lot more strategy and there's a lot more recruiting pieces in terms of that depth that you need to have to win at the Division II level.
For sure. It's funny, like the it hurts when you lose a starter, but at that level, especially, like because you need that extra bullpen depth for the doubleheader day, like finding someone who can step into that role is important. But that leaves a huge gap on the back end, and that makes your decisions just there's a ton more weight when it comes to who you put the ball with. And I know for us last year it was my first year in the conference, and I was lucky enough to be surrounded with some guys who had a lot of experience and knew what they were doing. But man, it is just when you're trying to map out the way you want to play the series and the type of
Mm-hmm.
competitors that you're facing, like there's really no difference when it comes to like the top end talent. You're seeing professional ball players on almost every program. So that was an eye opening experience for me coming from the state of Ohio, where our Division II baseball is fantastic, but you don't see that level of consistency like you would down there in the Sunshine State Conference. So super special. I think obviously for me, I grew a lot in that space. When it comes to your experience in terms of like, let's say our limitations and development, do you go about the way you plan out your let's say practice plans or your individualized instruction differently based on the time limitations?
Yeah, I think you have to because the more time you have, obviously, the more drills you can do, or the more time you can spend teaching things. But when your hours limits are a little bit shorter, I mean, you kind of go back and forth. Is it more important to focus on technique, or is it more important to get the reps? So I think it just depends on, for me, how the previous day or session went. If I feel like I sped through something, I might spend the next time with a little bit, slowing it down a little bit more and focusing a little bit more on, technique or fundamentals. And then vice versa. If I feel like sometimes, like we spent a lot of time on fundamentals and, we got 30 minutes, I'm just going to bang out a bunch of fungos and get a lot of reps and get a lot of, repetition. I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to balance that out because, you know, you go from, like, right now we're in our individual phase, and, we don't get a whole lot of time in terms of, per week. It's like 4 hours per week. And, it's like, man, what do you spend that time on? Because right now we're trying to mesh our team together and build some chemistry, but everything's individualized. So do you spend more time, you know, getting them together and working on certain things as a unit together, or do you venture out and kind of individualize each person with their own plan? So I think it just kind of depends on your personnel and what type of team you have. We have a lot of new guys here at USF, so it's more about getting to know them as their personalities and what they respond to right now. Versus last year when we had a core back of guys that had been here the year before. You spend more time, like, okay, well, you know who they are, their ability to retain information, or what clicks for them, what doesn't. For us, like me right now, I'm just getting to learn and getting to know a lot of these guys and getting to know their personalities. And so you spend more time like trying to relate to them than you do actually sometimes getting to work on fundamentals, because you want to make sure that that they that when something clicks for them versus when it's just kind of wasted air.
Yeah, that's powerful. I know we've had several guys on the show, including Jeremy Sheetinger and Zan Barksdale, Jerry
Oh yeah.
Weinstein, speak about the power of those relationships and how important that is to develop that. And I think one of the beautiful pieces that they always throw in is something along the lines of, while you're building that relationship, there's still instruction going on, but you're finding that slot, right? And I think that's exactly what you're touching on there, is like how much information, how much time do we have, what are we prioritizing right now, the bulk of this information or prioritizing the relationship? Because I think like you said, when you start to learn the personalities and the identities of the players, it does help you clock when they get the message and when they don't. So in theory, that does expedite the process later on as that relationship becomes a little bit stronger. Is that something as a player that um, would you consider yourself one of those guys who it took a little bit to warm up to, or were you pretty much in when you met someone?
I think I do a good job of being in right away. I mean, I like to tell the guys, first off, I have old school values, but I have new school swagger. I mean, I try to stay up to with the times in terms of whether it be shoes, music, shows, social media, just because being able to relate to that, I think helps break the ice, and I think it helps expedite that process. So, if you could talk about, let's just say, music with guys, and you talk about what they like to listen to and what you like to listen to, and then I think it just kind of starts to build that trust bridge, so to speak. For me, I wear Adidas, but I love Jordan, and I love wearing J's when I can. So there's some guys in the past and in our team now that I'll send a pic when I get a new pair of J's, and then it starts that just a conversation of like off the field. And I think a lot of times when especially new guys, when you're first meeting with guys, you're a coach, to them. You're not like, my nickname is CC, but they look at you as that authoritative figure of like, okay, I want to make sure that I don't say anything or do anything that to make him you know like me, not like me, not respect me, whatever that may be. So I think I do a good job of trying to break the ice early on, of just like something that I can go to when maybe they're struggling one day, or maybe they're I can just kind of tell they're down for something, you know whether it's class, a girlfriend, or something happened at home, to where I can just go to that kind of takes their mind out of like that space and out of the sports space, and as, hey, I'm still somebody here who wants to build a relationship with you, that you can trust me. So I think for me, the most important piece is the relationship with the players, because at the end of the day, if they don't trust you, or if they don't feel like you really have their back, it's going to be always hard to reach them or get them to do the things that you're trying to do, and understand that you're helping them and not just picking on them or criticizing them.
And I think one of the things that I've struggled with is as someone who's kind of early on in their career when it comes to the coaching piece is building that trust, and like you mentioned, like having that understanding that like you have their back, and then also understanding like there's also coaching decisions that have to be made personnel wise, and they understand that too. So it's not like that goes unnoticed, but that line's been very difficult to walk at times. I think it gets blurry when it comes to like, okay, yes, I'm giving you as much as I can. Like I'm giving you 100% of who I am and what I know, at the right times, hopefully. But then on the counter side, like I'm also doing that to the other 37 guys. You know what I mean? So
Correct.
that dynamic is it's kind of beautiful and threatening for the player for sure, because you're getting like pieces
For sure.
from everywhere, and you're getting a lot of energy and information, but you also know everyone else is, right? So is there something that
Absolutely.
you let's say some advice as someone who's played professionally that you would give to players who um, maybe struggle with that relationship piece, or understanding where their coaches are coming from?
Yeah, I would say to them that just remember that as a coach, um, you're not always going to like the coach, but you got to respect them and understand that they're doing what's best for you and ultimately what's best for the team. I think a lot of decisions sometimes, players feel, oh, coach doesn't like me, or he's not talking to me because of this or that. But ultimately, like you said, there's 40 guys on a team that we have to make sure that we're giving this equal time to, and trying to develop all 40 guys. I think at times, players, if they get feelings hurt because they just think that it's a matter of liking somebody, or not liking. And at the end of the day, it's our job is to develop you into the best possible version of yourself that's going to help the team. And sometimes players don't always see it that way. Sometimes they see it as, well, he's not doing what's best for me. But I think they misread that of, hey, we're doing what's best for the team, for you, like out of what we need for you for the team. And I think a lot of times that kind of gets confusing to players, because again, they're they're always going to like you when they're doing well, or when they're playing. But when they're not playing, or they're not playing well, and you have to work with them, criticize them, obviously constructive criticism. Sometimes they always don't take it that way, and they get their feelings hurt. I tell my guys all the time, hey, it's a facts over feelings thing. Like, I'm not always going to be you're not always going to like me, because I'm going to be honest with you. And sometimes guys don't like when you're honest with them, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to give you like the fact of, this is why maybe you're not playing, or this is why you can't get this process right. And the quicker they kind of realize and gravitate towards the man, he's telling me this because he cares, because he wants me to be great, because he wants me to be the best version of myself. Then I think it kind of makes that relationship and makes that understanding for them a little bit easier.
Wow, and
I tell,
that's awesome.
okay.
And you were it's wonderful. You were pieces of these fantastic programs. In fact, carrying with them fantastic cultures. But to hear you speak on that piece of it, like that is something that at its core comes down to the culture of the program. And diving into now USF, can you give us just a little bit of maybe you guys' identity and what you're trying to preach to your guys this season?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a whole new staff at USF. Coach Mitch Hannes came over from Indiana State, and we got. I was retained as a blessing, for me to be able to stay here in my hometown and coach. And um, I would say it's just, we're going to work hard. We're going to be respected, and every time we step on the field, um, the players and coaches included, you're going to get our best. We started individual practice this past week, and I mean it's been hard, and I say that just because it's we don't waste any time, we don't waste any moments. Every opportunity to get better, we're taking advantage of it. And it's been myself included. It's been a change, and it's been adjustment for me as well. Just going out every day and being constantly doing something to make sure we are giving everything to the players to make them the best version of themselves. And I think it's a change for some of the returning players as well. And they might not see it right now, but long term, I think all the guys will see, like, man, like these coaches gave us everything that they had to make us better, and I think we're going to be a really good team for it. And so that when the season does come, it's more games and less practice. They already know how to practice, and they know how to practice on their own, so that those hours limits come into play. We don't have to be on the field or in the cages with them, because they'll know exactly the expectation and the standard, and they're able to uphold that without us even being out there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. Wow. So let's touch on this before we take off here. From a recruiting standpoint, and you guys do a great job bringing guys in at USF, and you've got a group of coaches on staff with you that have an incredible track record when it comes to recruiting. What are let's go three things that you look for when it comes to just a baseline non-physical recruitable trait?
For number one for me, what I think is character. There's a lot of great players across the country, at all levels, and I think the sometimes players don't get recruited and they don't know why. Not to say that their character is bad, but that means a lot in terms of doing our homework and making sure we're getting the right guys that fit, the culture, so to speak, or the work ethic. Because there are a lot of guys out there who are great players, but they don't quite understand that sometimes recruiting is not based on that we don't think you're a good player. It's just you're not the right fit for what we need right now. And I think along with that is understanding, the personnel that we have. We're in a hotbed here in Tampa, and there's plenty of great high school options. And sometimes, coach calls you and it's like, oh, I got this third baseman that would be great for you guys. And I would probably agree, like he would be a great fit on in another year, but right now the personnel is just we don't need that, and unfortunately we can't recruit that guy, because we would be doing him a disservice to come here and not play or sit and not develop, because he's there's a log jam. So I think like character and personnel would be two things that are non-physical traits. The last thing for me is a big thing is watching guys practice, and not to say of a physical trait, but just watching like kind of how they are with their teammates, and watching how they are in between innings, or after a game, before a game. Because little things like that, like they're always going to typically play hard on the field. They're always, especially when they know you're watching, they're always going to be, making sure that they're dotting their T's and dotting their I's, crossing their T's, so to speak. But I think things like that, when a kid walks off the field, and it's going to sound really, minor, but like, are you carrying your bag, or is mom or dad carrying your bag? Like little things like that. Just sometimes, I just notice, I guess, in terms of like, man, if I'm gonna make a decision, on a kid, and I'm just not sure, is there something that that sticks out that maybe says, you know what, this guy needs to come here because he did this. He held the door open before, some elderly ladies walking by, or oh man, he just ran through a stop sign in the middle of a parking lot. And again, like there's a lot that goes into recruiting, and there's a lot people think different things, and when they're recruiting guys. But I guess it's just like little things like that to me, because you want to make the right decision for your program and for the kid, because you don't want to set kids up to fail, if like, man, this is probably just not the right program. And even though at the time of recruitment, the coach, whether it's high school or travel, and the player might not be a fan of yours because of not recruiting them. At the end of the day, you're doing the best thing for the kid probably in the long term, because you don't want him to get here, be unhappy, and then be looking for another school, a year or two later. So I always try to tell myself, like, yes, I'm trying to get the best players for our program, and help us win. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for the player and the kid. If you're really passionate about coaching and helping kids get to their full potential, you have to put their needs a lot of times in front of yours, in terms of what's going to help them in their development to be the best version of themselves, and have the best possible college career and pro career if they have it. Because I know growing up, that's all I wanted to do was play professional baseball. And I think a lot of times about, myself when I'm coaching kids or recruiting kids, like, if that was my son, like, what would I want for him? What would I, what would I tell him? And so, it's when I go to a showcase or tournaments or whatever it may be, I try my best to watch every kid, take notes on every kid possible. It doesn't always happen because, you get caught up, or you have to go to another field, or recruit calls happen, whatever it may be. But I always try to tell myself, like, 'cause I have an 8-year-old son, and man, I hope he gets a chance to play at the next level. And I would want the same, for him when he goes and starts performing in front of coaches. So that's kind of a long-winded answer,
No,
but
that's fine.
basically just,
Chris, that was awesome. I know I got a lot of that, and I'm sure the players listening and coaches listening will too. Uh, Before we go here, I want to make sure I shout out Valley Sporting Goods. Thank you so much for being a sponsor of the podcast. If you're looking for training gloves or any kind of equipment, feel free to check out the link in the description for a discount. Thank you to the Baseball Bluebook Network for allowing us to partner with them for the show. If you haven't checked out their app, it's free. You'll have access to recruits, players, events. It's one of the largest directories of player and coaches in the world, and it's free. So make sure we check that out on the App Store. And again, thank you to Coach Cates here, Director of Player Development at USF, for taking the time and really sharing some awesome stuff with us and making us all better. So, Chris, thank you for stopping in.
I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to the next time.
All righty. Thanks, Chris. Bye, everyone.
All right, man.